This is not going to be your average cops and robbers story. In today's video, we dive into the dark and dangerous world of a different kind of A-team. Not the one you know from the 80s TV show, but an infamous family in London. This family is not your regular crime family. They built a criminal empire and rose to prominence in London during the 70s and 80s, and unlike the beloved TV heroes, they didn't fight for justice. This family created a well-orchestrated business and feared no one. From the streets of Islington's Barnsbury to unrivaled kingpins of London's underworld, this is the story of the Addams family. It all started out in the mid-1950s when the three Addams brothers were born. Tommy, Patrick and Terry grew up in a very large family of 11 children, born to an Irish truck driver called George Addams and his beloved wife. The family grew up in the Islington's Barnsbury council estate, which was rather tough. The activity in the port was dying out as years went by, causing an increase in criminality. Soon enough, Terry, Patrick and Tommy started moving into the wrong direction, whereas their siblings were living a normal life. The three Addams brothers' first venture into the underworld was extorting local market stall holders. They would come around, aggressively smash around a few things to intimidate the market stall holders, and simply ask them whether they would like this to happen again or not. These frightened market stallholders would obviously answer no. Well, the only option to prevent it from happening again was by paying them. Extortion led to armed robberies, and before the brothers knew it, they were full-on feared criminals, and started to move more like an organization and ventured into other sorts of criminality. Terry was the businessman of the brothers. He was the oldest of the three and had the brains. Patrick, also known as Patsy, was the enforcer. He would let his fists talk instead of his mouth. If there was a dispute or someone needed to be taught a lesson, Patsy would gladly take care of it. Tommy in his turn was the financial man. Everything that had to do with money laundering was his responsibility. The brothers thrived during the 1970s as armed robberies were nearly guaranteed to bring in a lot of cash. You have to imagine there weren't any electronic banking systems at that time, so everything was done by cash. The brothers knew where to rob and who to rob. On the 2nd of November 1976, Patsy was aiming to hit it big. He targeted a well-known betting shop in London. Initially, it seemed successful. He managed to get away with the loot. However, several hours later, police managed to track him down and arrested him on the spot. This arrest was an eye-opener for the brothers, and can be seen as a real turning point. Patsy was incarcerated for 7 years. Tommy and Terry knew this was not the way to go anymore. London police were now matching the aggressiveness of the brothers by arming themselves with serious weaponry as well. Robberies did not make sense any longer, especially while there was another less dangerous way on the rise to make even more money: narcotics. In the 1980s, there were significantly more people with money, causing the narcotics market to boom as well. The profit margins went through the roof, and it was only right that the Addams brothers got seriously involved. Within a short matter of time, the brothers rake in millions from selling white powder. However, it was not always easy. The insane profit margins caused many people to want a piece of the pie. This led to shootouts and fights all over London to claim the turf to sell on. Just like any other business, to expand their business, the Addams brothers needed cash. Cash to keep buying more and more kilos. Take a second to think how you would go about getting extra cash to invest. I can promise you, you won't have the same answer to this question as the Addams brothers did. On the 26th of November 1983, the Brink's mat warehouse at Heathrow is burglarized by a small gang. The thieves stole approximately 6,800 gold bars, many diamonds and cash, with a total value of £26 million, equivalent to nearly 100 million today. Let me know in the comments if you had the same answer. In fact, the loot was so big, the brothers had to call in for extra help because the bars were way too heavy. They initially only needed 3 million in capital to fund their operations, but now got a whole lot more. Sometime later, Tommy was seen handling gold bars by the police. He told them that he was not aware the bars came from the Brink's robbery and was acquitted. Most of the bars were melted and only a fraction of the loot was recovered. This capital propelled the Addams brothers. Business was absolutely skyrocketing and their ambition to become the kingpins of London's underworld was larger than ever. However, becoming the top dog was not possible without using any violence. The Adams brothers wanted to expand their turf, and this could only be done by aggressively taking it. Fights or shootouts, the brothers would have their men take care of it all. With Gilbert Winter as their #1 enforcer, no one was safe, not even a police informant, who they allegedly had whacked. Terry would not be Terry if he did not make smart business moves. Money was pouring in, and he had to find new ways to launder and invest the money. Here is where Saul Nahome comes in. Saul Nahome was a bookkeeper from the underworld, and was excellent at what he did. Together with Saul, the brothers would start to open up legitimate businesses, different sorts of businesses in which cash was important, so they could alter the finances. In the beginning of the 90s, the Adams family was still going very strong. Terry had structured the business in such a way that it just kept growing. The white powder was still flowing by the kilos. The money laundering operations were going well. Nevertheless, there was one thing. The violence the brothers used made opponents scared, which in turn allowed the family to grow. However, it also made them a critical target for the police. The Adams brothers did not really care though. They had plenty of officers and detectives on payroll to know exactly what was happening, which prevented them from being caught. Besides that, who would even dare to talk about them at this point? Everyone was well aware that snitching on the Adams family could seriously cost you. It was not looking good for the London police at all. They had to admit they were not going to be the ones taking the Adams family down. After they accepted their fate, they made way for the MI5, the UK's domestic counterintelligence and security agency. This security service launched an entire investigation into the Adams family in 1997 with one goal: taking down the entire criminal organisation from top to bottom. Starting with the brothers. They started by bugging the key players' homes with listening equipment. On the 23rd of July in 1997, Terry was taped in his home. An associate had crossed the line, and without thinking twice, Terry goes on a rant saying, "I want him livened up. I want him hurt double bad," among many other things. This was a perfect illustration of how easy it was for him to demand violence. Tommy was being taped too. Tommy thought he was smart by only discussing business on the road in a cab used by him, which in itself was not even a bad idea. Unfortunately for him, the cab was bugged as well and caused his downfall. He could clearly be overheard discussing a large cannabis shipment worth £8 million coming in. This recording, combined with other evidence, was enough to arrest Tommy and sentence him to 7 years in prison. This infuriated his older brother Terry. Terry, who was still being taped inside his home, can be overheard going on yet another tirade, saying he is going to smash his brother's face, among many other things not so nice. It seemed as if Terry knew Tommy's arrest could be the domino piece that would have the whole family fall down, one by one. Up to this moment, the brothers easily stayed out of the hands of the police, besides the one time Patsy got caught. This was a true wake-up call, and reality was setting in. That was not even the worst thing to happen though. On the 27th of November 1998, Saul Nahome was whacked in front of his home in Finchley, North London. Saul was crucial to the family. He knew down to the penny where all their money was and what properties and assets were theirs. He basically kept the family business running and liquid in terms of finances. The Adams family suddenly not having access to the amounts of cash they were used to would begin to slowly cripple them. Since Terry never made his own hands dirty, police had a hard time convicting him. That's when they decided to take a different approach, the Al Capone approach as they called it. Instead of focusing on the drug smuggling, they focused on his wealth. Just like that, they were suddenly not reliant on witnesses anymore, making the investigation much easier. The most important question was, how did he manage to afford all that luxury? Well, according to Terry, he was a PR consultant, but police managed to prove otherwise and sentenced him to 7 years in prison for money laundering in 2007. Patsy, who distanced himself from the underworld for many years, got himself in serious trouble in December 2013 when he struck a man called Paul Tiernan. Patsy suspected him to be an informant. The two got into an argument in which Paul aimed a weapon at Patsy. After a short scuffle, Patsy managed to strike Paul with his own weapon. Patsy was sentenced to 9 years in jail. Tommy, who was released in 2005, was jailed in 2017 again for 7 years for money laundering after another big operation by the police. During several raids, police seized £5 million of Tommy personally and another £2.5 million of his associates. And there you have it. The incredible story of the notorious Addams family, also known as the A-Team of the London underworld. At their peak, they were estimated to be worth a staggering £200 million and were allegedly behind 25 whackings. A far cry from the lovable TV A-Team who fought for justice, this family left a legacy of fear and destruction in their wake. Thank you to long-term subscriber and supporter of the channel PSIB for this video idea. Got a suggestion for a video? Let me know down in the comments. See you in the next one.